spells, whether they're gained through ancient knowledge of the arcane, strong ties to your draconic ancestry, or just finding a magic flute in the woods one day. Spells are as varied as their magical origins, and they've been some of the most interesting aspects in the history of Dungeons & Dragons. In my year-long experience of actually playing 5th edition, the thing that's intrigued me the most about the system is just how varied the magic is. Spellcasting classes have always interested me in RPGs, and way before I even had a group to play with, I'd just be looking through lists of spells in different editions of D&D, and just imagining how crazy it would be to use some of them in a real campaign. I mean, how could you not get excited over classic spells like Polymorph, Wish, Fireball, or even the all-powerful Sticks to Snakes, a spell that only the darkest of minds could comprehend. For real though, the first thing I did when getting into 5e was check if Sticks to Snakes was a spell in this system, and I was sorely disappointed. Who wouldn't want to turn their enemies' weapons into snakes at 4th level? Who's gonna be wielding spears and quarterstaffs in a mid-level campaign? Great for pulling pranks on guards or the monk in the party though. But that kind of brings me to the main point of this video. Actually looking through the 5e spell list, there are a lot of cool concepts that just kind of fall flat in practice. After actually having played D&D, I realized just how many duds were a part of my dream spell book. So, I'm gonna go through a bunch of 5e spells, starting from level 1 and ending with 9 that are either disappointing, underpowered, or both. And keep in mind, every campaign and Game Master is different, and your experiences with these spells will vary from mine. This is just my opinion after having played 5e for just a year, so let's not waste any more time and let's get right to it. Grease. Grease creates a 10-foot square of, well, grease on any surface within 60 feet. On a failed dex save, whoever is on that grease puddle is gonna slip and fall prone. Just like Sticks to Snakes, I was drawn to the spell Grease as a joke. Grease seems like a fun prank to pull on your party members. You could summon a pool of grease beneath them and watch them trip like they stepped on a banana peel. But then I realized something. You know what else creates a slippery, greasy surface? Literal grease. How much does a bottle of grease have to cost in your campaigns that having this spell becomes a viable option? Honestly, the same can be said about Snare as well, another level 1 spell which literally just creates a snare trap. I wouldn't recommend using a spell slot on something you could just as easily buy or make yourself for dirt cheap. I mean, if you have the time to prepare either of these spells, I would suggest just going to the store and buying a bottle of grease, or just making your own snare trap instead. Crown of Madness. Crown of Madness lets you charm any humanoid of your choice on a failed wisdom saving throw, forcing them to attack anyone within range at the beginning of their turn. I'll be honest, I love control spells. Things like command, suggestion, geas, all that good stuff. In the campaigns that I've played in, we've mostly had to deal with more thinking humanoids than monsters in the first place, so having spells that allow you to twist the minds of NPCs is a huge help. So it's no wonder why I gave my first Paladin Crown of Madness at level 5, and it was great. I'd just convert a random bandit into my crazed minion and let them shred through the battlefield. Only, I realized I played the spell wrong. In-game, I would cast a spell on someone, get them to run up and hit their ally, and then I'd come in to finish them off with my maul. The only problem is that none of that is actually possible. No, instead by the rules of Crown of Madness, the target of the spell only has to make an attack against an enemy of your choosing at the start of their turn. Other than that, the enemy is basically under his own control. He could just move away and attack your allies instead, and you can't do anything about it. Oh, and by the way, no, you can't actually finish someone off while the spell is active, because if you use your action for anything but focusing on the spell, it just ends. Crown of Madness is easily one of the most disappointing spells for me after learning what it actually does compared to how I actually used it in my campaigns. Lightning Bolt. I'll be honest, level 3 spells are some of my favorites in the player's handbook. Stuff like Leomin's Tiny Hut, Counterspell, and everyone's favorite and least favorite spell, Fireball. Unfortunately for Lightning Bolt, it's essentially a nerfed Fireball. When cast, you shoot at a 100 feet long lightning bolt in the direction of your choosing, and on a failed dex save, anything hit by the bolt takes 8d6 lightning damage, which is the same as fireball's damage. The problem is that a line attack will almost always only hit a couple of targets. Fireball's explosion is big enough to hit several targets, including ones that lightning bolt would have hit in the first place. If you somehow find yourself in a mega dungeon with battles in long stretches of 5-foot wide hallways, then yeah, take lightning bolt instead of fireball. Confusion. Each creature in a 10-foot sphere of a point you choose within 90 feet becomes confused on a failed wisdom save, forcing them to roll a d10 on an effect table shown here, with effects like moving in a random direction on a 1, skipping their turn on a 2 to 6, randomly attacking on 7 to 8, or just acting normally on a 9 to 10. This spell is a little confusing at first, but then you realize just how useless it is when there is literally a 20% chance of the spell not even having an effect, on top of the saves the target can potentially pass at the casting of the spell and the end of their turn. It would be hilarious as a level 2 or even a level 1 spell, but at level 4, Confusion has no redeeming qualities. Planar Binding. This 5th level spell binds a Fey, Fiend, Celestial, or Elemental to your service for an entire day if they fail a Charisma saving throw, basically making them under your control for the entirety of that day. Yeah, this is how you know that level 5 spells aren't kidding around. Fiends and Celestials alone are some of the strongest monsters in D&D. Being able to control just one of them for an entire day is amazing. Almost too amazing. Oh, it's 1,000 gold for one day. I mean, my players complain about spells costing 100 gold a pop, but you're telling me getting one powerful ally for a single day costs 1,000 gold. Not to mention, the stronger the monster, the more likely it is they'll make a higher charisma save, essentially making you waste 1,000 gold. That's 3 Revivifies and 4 Divinations, and guess what? Revivify doesn't use a save to revive the allies who just died, cause your Planar Binding upset a level 20 devil from hell. Just wait until you could cast it at level 9 for a year. You'll probably have thousands of pieces of gold for it anyways. Magic Jar. For 500 gold in a level 6 spell slot, Magic Jar makes your body go unconscious as your soul enters a jar and remains there for as long as the jar isn't broken. You may be asking why you would possibly want to replace your body with a jar, with potentially losing your character as a significant possibility if the jar breaks. Well, I'll tell you why. In the jar, you have a single action. You can switch your soul with someone else within 100 feet on a failed charisma save, giving you complete control over their body. For a villain, this is an amazing plot device, if one of the players is forced into the jar while their body becomes possessed by the main villain. But in the hands of the players, this just sounds like a DM's worst nightmare. If a player casts Magic Jar, they have essentially lost their character until they return to it. If the jar breaks out of range of their body, they die. They can't come back. If they choose to take over a powerful villain, they're probably not going to choose to go back into the jar, so now the DM has to figure out how he's going to run levels for a CR20 villain. Prismatic Spray. You fire off 8 beams of multicolored light in a 60-foot cone, rolling on a D8 table to see what color and effect each target is hit with on a failed dex save. Okay, I won't lie. This is one of the coolest attack spells I've seen. I don't know what it is, but I just find the idea of shooting these rainbow beams with all their different effects really unique and fun. Unfortunately, just like the spell Confusion, Prismatic Spray has huge duds on the effects table. 5 out of 8 options just does 10d6 damage, or half as much on a successful save, which is an abysmal amount of damage for level 7. Rolling a 6 causes a restraining effect, which the target needs to make 3 saves to escape or be turned to stone forever. This is easily the best effect, along with number 7 in the table, as the effect of number 7 blinds and sends a creature to a different plane of existence on a failed wisdom save. Finally, rolling an 8 will give you an extra beam of light, giving you a higher chance of getting a 6 or 7, but it's not really like you can choose who gets hit by the 6 or 7. Sure, you might send the boss into the abyss, but you might just end up turning a kobold into stone instead while doing a tiny amount of damage to everyone else. Overall, this spell is just not reliable at all. Control weather. This level 8 spell allows you to control the weather. Basically, you spend 10 minutes to cast it, and then you choose a category of weather effect like wind, temperature, precipitation, and cause it to raise or lower the intensity based on a table with up to 6 stages for each category. As if players didn't have enough ways to screw up a campaign setting, this spell can destroy entire regions of your campaign. Some kids being mean to you? Just cause a drought in their village and let their families die of famine. Want to cause an entire species of cold-blooded lizards to go extinct? Lower the temperature and cause a blizzard in the middle of a desert. Yeah, screw Mother Nature. Using this spell lets you become a benevolent god. But really, this has no real combat capabilities, and even if you wanted to use it against a villain, it's more of a slow burn kill than anything. The best use of this spell really is just being an evil jerk, not just to some random NPCs, but also to your DM. I mean, I'm not just gonna start researching meteorology just because you decided to melt my ice mountain setting with your little weatherman spell. Villains on the other hand, yeah, okay, this has some cool potential if your villain uses it, and it could be an amazing plot device. A lot of people like to run apocalypses in their campaigns, and honestly, this is the best spell for that. Weird. Alright, now we're talking. Level 9 spells are the ultimate feats of magic, causing incredibly powerful effects like becoming completely invulnerable or summoning huge meteors from the sky. And there's always the infamous wish spell, which has so many applications that the possibilities that come out of a wish spell are worthy of giving it its own video. Just like with the rest of the spell list though, not all of the level 9 spells exactly stack up. I was originally going to talk about Time Stop as a bad spell, but after doing more research, the price of time resuming upon affecting a target creature is diminished when you can do stuff like stack buffs on yourself for half of stop time, then cast a delayed fireball on your enemy, which of course doesn't affect any target creature immediately. Of course, you still have the limit of only being able to have a single concentration spell at a time, but getting all those extra turns for more actions is really good. The actual worst level 9 spell from the player's handbook is Weird. Yeah, that's the name of the spell. At the very least, it lives up to the name, but aside from having an interesting gimmick, Weird kinda sucks compared to other level 9 damage dealing spells. Each creature in a 30-foot sphere within a point of 90 feet of your choosing, and no, you can't choose who's affected, has a dark manifestation of their deepest fears appear, frightening and attacking them on a failed wisdom save for 4d10 damage. Seriously? You can do that with spells half of its level. If you want an illusion or a distraction, just use any of the other illusion spells. Phantasmal Force, a level 2 spell, also creates a damaging illusion, but only for a single person. But the real difference is you can control what the illusion is. You could create fake floors and have a guy fall through them. You could do that with a lot of illusion spells in fact, just not with Weird. It's even worse when you realize that's the School of Illusion's only representation on the level 9 spell list. We could have had something like creating illusory worlds for the target's consciousness to be transferred to, while their body remained in the real world, or you could fool a target into thinking they've died, completely shattering their sanity. Those might lean more into the School of Enchantment, but let's be honest, Illusion deserves a way better level 9 spell. So those are just some of the spells that I found that were really underwhelming, the kinds of spells that I'd never see myself using. Or maybe I'd love to use them if they had more of a kick to them. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't use these spells at all. D&D is a role-playing game, and everything is decided by your own creativity and the DM-specific rulings for everything. I could see a wizard having to cast Lightning Bolt to power up electrical devices, or having to pay the steep price of planar binding for plot reasons, like using it on a summoned Ifriti and asking it who released it from its bottle. Ultimately, you can find a good use for almost every ability if you think hard enough, and isn't that the reason why we play role-playing games? I mean, that's why I play D&D at least.